Have you ever had a dream that felt more real than your waking life? One that stayed with you, not just for hours, but for years? You're not alone, and it's not your imagination, because every night something remarkable happens, something almost no one talks about. You don't just rest, you travel. You journey to places that exist beyond memory, beyond logic, beyond the veil of time itself. And yet, when morning comes, we forget. But here's the secret no one told you. This forgetting is not natural, it's programmed. In this video, we'll explore why your dreams vanish, why you're trained to ignore them, and what happens when, finally, you choose to remember. Because somewhere, buried beneath the noise of your day, is a world that's been calling you back. A world after the dream. Stay until the end because the final chapter reveals what almost no one dares to say aloud. But once you hear it, you'll never look at dreams the same way again. If this video awakens something in you, leave a comment. Type 1 if you felt this truth. Type 0 if you're still unsure, but curious. What if everything you've been told about sleep is wrong? What if it's not the end of awareness, but the beginning of something far greater? Each night without fanfare, we lie down and close our eyes. To most, that's the end of the day. But what if it's actually the beginning of a journey your conscious mind has been trained to forget? Sleep, we say, as if it's a harmless reset, a biological off switch. But to the ancient mystics, that word meant something else entirely. To them, sleep was not a void, it was a threshold, not unconsciousness, but a rehearsal for the final transition we all must face, death. In the Tibetan tradition, this threshold was known as the bardo, and specifically the milam bardo, the dream bardo. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, every night we traverse a subtle version of the same terrain we'll face after physical death. The dream bardo isn't fiction, it's training. It's a nightly simulation of the soul's passage through the unseen layers of reality. And the most haunting part, you go there, whether you remember or not. Let's anchor this in a more modern analogy. Imagine your waking life is a space station, and each night your consciousness detaches like an astronaut on a tether and floats into non-physical space. You drift into realms where time bends, where symbols communicate directly, where the veil between self and source thins. Most people wake up without recalling a thing. But that doesn't mean the journey didn't happen. It only means the tether went slack. This is not mystical speculation. Science is beginning to catch up. Neuroscientists like Dr. Alan Hobson have long noted that REM sleep shows brain activity nearly equal to that of waking life. Except what's happening during that time is nonlinear, symbolic, emotionally charged, and occasionally life-altering. Carl Jung, one of the first modern thinkers to take dreams seriously, referred to them as the royal road to the unconscious. He believed dreams were not just mental residue, but messages, coded signals from the deeper self, often containing truths the waking ego couldn't handle directly. In his personal journals, Jung detailed dreams that predicted events in his own life and offered profound insight into global archetypes. Meanwhile, in America, Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, gave over 14,000 recorded readings in a self-induced sleep state, tapping into realms of wisdom that went beyond medical advice and into past lives, soul contracts, and cosmic laws. His work was not metaphorical. It was specific, detailed, and transformative. But there's more. Ingo Swann, the CIA-backed psychic researcher and remote viewer, often described sleep as a vehicle of consciousness calibration. Through techniques like controlled dreaming and intentional out-of-body travel, he mapped landscapes that were consistent, recurring, and verifiable by others. In one experiment, Swann correctly described the rings around Jupiter before the Voyager spacecraft confirmed them. So what is it we're really tapping into? Let's zoom out. The field of quantum consciousness, pioneered by thinkers like Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, suggests that the brain may not create consciousness, but rather receive it, like a satellite dish picking up a broadcast. During sleep, this signal may shift frequency, allowing us access to layers of reality our daytime perception cannot handle. Think of it this way. You're not a brain creating images. You're a soul tuning into a higher broadcast. The Egyptians believed in this too. Their Book of the Dead describes the journey of the soul through the Duat, an underworld of symbolic gates, divine judges, and sacred challenges. And this was not something that only happened after death. It It was something the soul practiced nightly, preparing for the moment of transition. And these aren't just ancient fables. Robert Monroe, a pioneer in consciousness studies, documented his spontaneous exits from the body during sleep. What he discovered were structured, consistent locales that appeared more than once with intelligent beings and coherent environments. He later created the Monroe Institute, where thousands of participants reported similar dreamlike experiences, exploring cities of light, dimensional bridges, and echoes of previous lives. So, if all this is true, why do most of us wake up empty? Because our culture rewards forgetting. We are taught from childhood to dismiss dreams. It's just your imagination. You're being silly. Go back to sleep. But going back to sleep is exactly the problem. As modern life accelerated, dreams were demoted. Mainstream education called them brain trash. Medicine offered pills to shut them down. Religion outsourced transcendence to distant heavens. And science, at least for a long time, couldn't measure them, so it ignored them. But just because we can't measure the dream doesn't mean the journey isn't real. In fact, the dream may be more real than what we call reality. And here's the twist: you are not a body that dreams. You are a traveler that visits the body between journeys. This is why Tibetan monks dedicate decades to Milam yoga, not for entertainment, but for liberation. They practice awareness within dreams so that, at the moment of death, they may move consciously through the bardos, selecting rebirth or dissolving into light. So ask yourself, if dreams are maps, why have we stopped reading them? And if sleep is a doorway, what waits for you on the other side? Maybe it's time to remember. Why do we remember what we wore yesterday, but forget where our soul just traveled during the night? That's not a lapse in memory. That's programming. From the very beginning, most of us were trained not to remember, not to explore, and most importantly, not to believe. It's just a dream. Go back to sleep. Don't be silly. Dreams aren't real. Harmless words? Maybe not, because behind those words is a system that quietly discredits the most mystical part of your existence, your connection to something beyond the material world. What if forgetting your dreams was never about forgetfulness, but about control? They were maps. In ancient Tibetan Buddhism, especially in the practice of Milam, dream yoga, dreams weren't just nightly entertainment, they were maps. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches that consciousness travels through subtle realms each night, and learning to navigate those realms while alive was considered essential training for what comes after death. To forget your dreams wasn't just unfortunate, it was spiritually dangerous. Why? Because remembering your dreams meant remembering who you truly are, not the identity you play in waking life, but the eternal consciousness behind the veil. And systems of control, be they religious, political, or social, don't do well with awakened individuals. Imagine this: if every person remembered just one truly lucid dream, a moment when they realized they were more than their body, their job, their story, they'd begin to lose their fear of death. Fear is the greatest currency of control. Remove that fear, and the illusion of power structures begins to crumble. That's why dreamers have always been silenced, not because they were irrational, but because they were dangerous to the lie. Carl Jung, the pioneer of analytical psychology, believed that dreams were not random, but messages from what he called the collective unconscious. He wrote that dreams often carry truths that the ego is not yet ready to integrate. That's why we forget, not because the dream is irrelevant, but because the waking mind can't handle the truth it contains. In one of his journals, Jung confessed that the dream state was often more real to him than waking life. He even suggested that archetypal dreams, the ones filled with symbols like labyrinths, serpents, or divine beings, weren't personal fantasies, but portals into a shared spiritual dimension humanity has forgotten. And science? Surprisingly, it agrees. Neuroscientists like Dr. Alan Hobson and Stephen LaBerge have shown that REM sleep is rich with brain activity, particularly in areas connected to memory, emotion, and abstract thinking. But here's the twist: during REM sleep, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic and linear memory, is suppressed. It's not that dreams are chaotic, it's that our normal translator is offline. In simpler terms, your soul speaks, but your mind doesn't understand the language. And so the moment we wake, bam, the rational brain takes over. Alarms, emails, breakfast, scrolling TikTok, and the signal is drowned before we even sit up. But this isn't just a biological phenomenon, it's a cultural decision. In modern Western society, dreams are mocked or dismissed. Public education doesn't teach dream journaling. The media portrays dreamers as either delusional or mentally unstable. Even commercialized spirituality often replaces inner exploration with overpriced crystals and guided meditations that avoid true introspection. As Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, warned, dreams are today's answers to tomorrow's questions. He gave thousands of readings while in trance, many of which involved past lives, future visions, and medical diagnoses, all accessed through sleep. He insisted that dreams were messages from the soul, from guides, or from higher dimensions. And yet, mainstream psychology still labels most dreams as residue of the day. But residue doesn't reveal truths you've never studied. Residue doesn't teach you ancient symbols you couldn't have invented. Residue doesn't leave you weeping with recognition of a place you've never seen. Dreams do. Let's not forget Ingo Swann, who worked with the CIA to develop remote viewing. His insights came largely from altered states, dreamlike trances where he accessed information beyond time and space. Swann didn't see dreams as fantasy. He called them data streams from non physical sources, sometimes future memories, sometimes soul level memories. When asked how this was possible, he famously replied, "Because we are not only what we think we are." So here's the chilling truth: forgetting is not natural, it is reinforced. Because remembering makes you unmanageable. If you remembered that your soul is eternal, no one could use fear to sell you salvation. If you remembered your nightly journeys, you'd stop believing you're limited to the waking world. If you remembered your origin, your nature, your power, you'd rise. And that terrifies the systems built on sleepwalking minds. But here's the hope: your soul remembers everything. It's not lost, it's just hidden, like a pearl deep in the sea, waiting for the diver who dares to return. And return, you can. Start here. Every morning, before touching your phone, before you even open your eyes, pause. Ask, where was I just now? Then write. Don't analyze, don't edit, just record. A color, a sound, a word, a face. Do this daily, and soon something beautiful happens. The forgetting fades, the remembering grows. Synchronicities appear in waking life, moments that mirror your dreams. Symbols recur, guidance deepens, and one day you'll no longer ask, what did I dream last night? You'll ask, what did I just return from? What if your dreams aren't illusions, but instructions? For centuries, we've brushed off our dreams as nighttime theater, bizarre, poetic, maybe worth a laugh over breakfast. But what if we've misunderstood the purpose of dreaming all along? What if dreams are not byproducts of rest, but blueprints from beyond? Let's rewind history. In ancient Egypt, dreams were considered portals to divine knowledge. Inside the dream temples of Imhotep and Abydos, priests practiced incubation, a sacred ritual of sleeping within temple walls, hoping to receive messages from gods or ancestors. These weren't casual naps. The dreamer fasted, bathed in ritual water, and prepared their body like a vessel. Their dreams were recorded and interpreted as prescriptions for healing, prophecies, or warnings. Later, the Greeks carried this wisdom into their healing sanctuaries at places like Epidaurus, where seekers underwent ritual purification before sleeping beside statues of Asclepius, the god of medicine. The Greeks believed that the divine didn't speak in thunder, but in symbols, metaphors, and dreams. Meanwhile, in the Himalayas, Tibetan monks were undergoing one of the most advanced consciousness training systems ever devised, Milam, or Dream Yoga. This wasn't for fun. It was a discipline. These monks didn't dream to escape reality. They dreamed to face it. They believed dreams held the key to navigating the bardo, the intermediate state between death and rebirth. Forgetting your dreams wasn't neutral. It was spiritual amnesia. Ikor. If your waking self is just one version of you, then where is the rest of you when you sleep? Modern science is beginning to circle back to what that the ancients already knew. Dr. Alan Hobson, the Harvard neuroscientist known for his work on REM sleep, challenged the long-held belief that dreams are random static. Instead, he called them cognitive simulations, emotionally charged, structured experiences that mirror waking life's themes, but in symbolic form. But perhaps more compelling is the research of Dr. Stephen LaBerge at Stanford. His groundbreaking studies on lucid dreaming proved that dreamers could intentionally move their eyes during REM sleep in a prearranged pattern, allowing researchers to communicate with them in real time. Think about that. The dreamer knew they were dreaming, remained conscious inside that dream, and could respond intentionally. That's not a dream. That's consciousness on another frequency. Let's take one of LaBerge's documented cases. A dreamer entered lucidity, remembered their mission, and performed a sequence of left right eye movements. Electrodes picked it up. In the dream, they wandered through a surreal urban landscape, populated with symbols they swore were not imagined, but discovered. After waking, the subject described the dream not as fiction, but as a journey inward, saying, "It felt like I was walking through myself." This idea of the dream world as a real structured space echoes the work of Robert Monroe, whose research into out of body experiences, OBs, laid the foundation for what we now call non local consciousness studies. In his journeys, Monroe visited locales, stable dreamlike environments that he could revisit again and again. He met guides, faced fears, observed non physical phenomena that defied imagination yet followed consistent laws. He didn't hallucinate, he charted. If you return to the same dream landscape more than once, is it still a dream or is it a place? The Tibetan view would say yes. These are bardos, intermediate zones of consciousness where karmic imprints surface, where the soul meets its teachers and its tests. These states aren't post death, they're pre liberation. And the more conscious you become within them, the more skillfully you navigate life and death. Even quantum theorists are weighing in. Sir Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff have proposed that consciousness may be non local, residing not in the brain, but in quantum microtubules that tap into a field of universal information. In their view, the brain doesn't produce consciousness, it tunes into it. So when you sleep, your brain may be retuning the dial, accessing frequencies your daytime mind can't comprehend. And what we call dreams, they may be the compressed residue of these transmissions. Or keener. That would explain why dreamers across time and culture describe the same themes. Flying not with wings, but with will. Meeting teachers of light in libraries of knowledge. Walking through landscapes more vivid than waking life. Reliving lifetimes in the span of seconds. This is not coincidence, it's contact. Even Albert Einstein was said to have received scientific insights during sleep-like states. The famous visualization of him riding alongside a beam of light, a moment that led to his theory of relativity, was not born in a lab. It was born in imagination, the same fertile field accessed during dreams. And this idea isn't new to Western mystics. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, performed over 14,000 readings while in a trance state resembling sleep. He diagnosed illnesses, revealed past lives, and even predicted future trends, all while asleep. Eric, you? Indigenous wisdom echoes the same truth. The Aboriginal Australians speak of the dream time, a dimension outside linear time where all reality originates. In their view, our waking life is the dream, and dreams are where truth lives. The Navajo Nation teaches that dreams carry ancestral voices, guidance from the spirit realm, and messages that must be honored, not ignored. And the Tibetan Lamas say the demons in your dreams are not evil. They are educators. They embody your fears so that you may turn toward them, not run. When you face them with awareness, when you say to the shadow, "What are you teaching me?" you're not dreaming anymore. You're awakening. What if falling asleep is not a descent, but a departure? Each night, as your body rests, something within you moves. It lifts, expands, travels. But where does it go? Many would say, nowhere. It's just a dream. But ancient spiritual maps and modern consciousness research suggest otherwise. In truth, sleep may be a daily rehearsal for death, and dreams the training grounds of the soul. In Tibetan Buddhism, there exists a concept known as the six bardos, intermediate states of consciousness that bridge waking life, dying, death, and rebirth. Among them is the Milam Bardo, or Dream Bardo, a realm that we enter not only after death, but every single night. According to the Bardo Thodol, commonly known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, those who become conscious in this state can gain profound spiritual clarity and even liberation from the cycle of rebirth. This is not poetic metaphor. It is a detailed map used for centuries by Tibetan monks as practical training for navigating the afterlife. What if the afterlife isn't a place you go when you die, but a place you've already visited in your sleep? Let's consider the work of Robert Monroe, a pioneer in out of body experiences and founder of the Monroe Institute. Through deep exploration of altered states, many achieved through sleep, Monroe charted what he called focus levels, each corresponding to a distinct layer of consciousness. These were not dreams in the chaotic, random sense. They were repeatable, structured environments. In Focus 27, for example, Monroe described a park, a serene realm filled with helpful beings, architecture, and light. He and others returned to this same place over and over, encountering familiar presences and consistent geography. These were not imagined scenes, they were navigable worlds, entered through shifts in consciousness. Similarly, near death researchers like Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, documented hundreds of cases where patients, clinically dead and devoid of brain activity, reported vivid encounters with luminous landscapes, cities of light, and sentient beings. Remarkably, many described seeing the same places they had dreamed of as children, long before their near death event. In one case, a woman described standing in a field of golden grass under a lavender sky. It was peaceful, filled with an indescribable love. She later realized she had visited that meadow many times in her childhood dreams. Was it fantasy or memory? What determines whether we access these higher dream realms or become trapped in the labyrinths of nightmares? The answer, both mystics and neuroscientists agree, is resonance. Just like a radio tunes to a frequency, your consciousness attunes to emotional and spiritual vibrations. If you fall asleep, angry, ashamed, or burdened by fear, you may unconsciously descend into lower dream realms, dense, chaotic, looping mazes, the kind that leave you disoriented and heavy when you wake. But enter to sleep with intention, presence, and peace, and the gateways open. Dr. Bruce Greyson, one of the world's foremost NDE researchers, found a strong correlation between meditative dream practices and smooth transitions during clinical death. Individuals who had trained themselves to stay aware in dream states often reported a sense of calm familiarity in the death experience, as though they had been there before. Why? Because they had. Here's a grounded metaphor. Your consciousness is like a piano. Each key represents a different state of awareness: grief, gratitude, confusion, clarity. Every night, as your body falls away, your soul sits at that piano, and the music it plays, the realms it accesses, are dictated by the emotional chords you've been rehearsing during the day. So, if your days are filled with judgment and anxiety, your dreams may reflect distortion. But if your waking life is laced with wonder, compassion, and truth seeking, your sleep becomes a corridor of light. In the meal, mashfucking. This is why lucid dreaming isn't just a cool trick. It's preparation for navigating the unseen. In the Milam practice, advanced Tibetan monks are trained to remain conscious not just in dreams, but even through the process of dying. These adepts don't view death as an ending. They view it as a transition they've rehearsed every night for decades. They learn to recognize the dissolving of elements, earth, water, fire, wind, not with fear, but with familiarity. They know the symbols. They've walked the paths. They don't fear the unknown because it's not unknown to them anymore. And this isn't exclusive to Tibet. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the soul undergoes trials and passes through various gates in the afterlife. These gates, symbolic challenges and guardians, are incredibly similar to archetypal dreams of mazes, monsters, or guardians of light. In Jungian psychology, these figures are called archetypes, primordial images embedded in the collective unconscious. Carl Jung believed that dream journeys were not hallucinations, but soul messages encoded in mythic language. And even in the scientific realm, quantum consciousness theories, like those proposed by Penrose and Hameroff, posit that awareness may not be confined to the brain, but instead tap into non-local fields of intelligence, much like a computer accessing cloud data. In this view, dreams are not made, they are received. So what does this mean for you? It means that your dreams are not just dreams, they are soul terrains. And every night, you are entering the rehearsal hall of the great beyond. When you start to treat your dreams as messages, not noise, when you choose to fall asleep not with stress, but with sacred attention, when you begin to recognize symbols, recurring patterns, and moments of lucidity, Then sleep becomes something else entirely, not rest, but return. Let's ask the forbidden question. What if you never truly sleep at all, at least not in the way you've been taught? What if, night after night, your soul slips past the walls of this reality and steps into a broader, vaster, and more intelligent universe, one that holds answers you're not supposed to bring back? Because if everyone remembered the truth of where they go when the body rests, if they recalled even a fraction of their soul's nightly journey, then everything would begin to unravel. Not because the world is evil, but because much of it is built on forgetting. A population that remembers its dreams is a population that cannot be controlled. Dreams are dangerous to systems that thrive on obedience. That's why they've been dismissed, mocked, buried. But in ancient times, dreamers were revered and feared. The Oracle of Delphi, one of the most powerful spiritual authorities in ancient Greece, spoke visions that shaped empires. Her insight didn't come from textbooks. It came from altered states of consciousness, the dreamlike trances induced by deep meditation and sacred vapors. The same applies to the Egyptian priests, who used incubation chambers to receive dream messages from gods. These weren't bedtime stories. These were downloads of divine intelligence. In indigenous traditions from the Americas to Australia, dreams weren't mental activity. They were communication with the ancestors. They were law. They were memory. To dream was to see, and to remember was to become dangerous. Today, however, we are taught to treat dreams like junk mail. Got nightmares? Take a pill. Had a lucid experience? Probably just stress. Dreamed of flying, dying, or meeting someone who knows your soul? Nothing to worry about. But there's a reason for this dismissal. It keeps you asleep, even while you're awake. As Carl Jung warned, people will go to incredible lengths to avoid their soul. Not because it's dark, but because it holds a mirror. And mirrors, when you're clinging to an illusion, can feel like threats. Modern culture encourages a mechanical relationship with sleep. Shut down, recharge, reboot. But your soul isn't a smartphone. It doesn't turn off, it travels. And if you begin to wake up inside your dreams, you begin to wake up outside of them too. Because that's what lucid dreaming really is. Not fantasy control, but sovereign awareness. It's when the soul whispers, hey, this isn't real. And you listen and you remember. Three forces conspire to keep you forgetful. One, organized religion historically. Heaven is far away after death. Obey, and one day you may reach it. This delays spiritual responsibility and keeps power external. Two, scientific materialism. Consciousness is an illusion. Dreams are just brain static. This erases the sacred in favor of the mechanical. Three, modern media. Constant noise, endless distraction, worlds that entertain but never awaken. This fractures attention and floods the symbolic mind with synthetic nonsense. Three fronts, one goal, disconnection from your inner world. But what happens when you turn back in? When you start writing down your dreams, when you meet your nightmare and say, what do you want to teach me? When you speak aloud the names and places you visited in sleep, you are reclaiming your soul's compass. That act, that remembering, is not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It is reintegration. It's putting yourself back together. Let's consider Ingo Swann, the famed remote viewer whose work with Stanford Research Institute and the CIA showed that the human mind can perceive distant locations, events, and energies without physical travel. His abilities were not born in laboratories. They were refined in dream states. He described entering deep trance and dreamlike vision to retrieve details of targets thousands of miles away. He called this non-local awareness. What made him different? He trusted his inner world more than the noise of the outer one. That's the secret. Lucid dreamers, remote viewers, mystics, they all share a common trait. They remember. Because once you remember, you start to ask questions. Who am I, really? Why do I keep meeting this same figure in my dreams? What is this temple I return to each week? Why did I know what someone would say before they spoke it? You begin to decode the veil. You become immune to the hypnosis of the waking world. This isn't a theory. It's a threat to systems built on fear. Because a person who no longer fears death, who no longer buys into status, conformity, or blind consumption, who no longer forgets what they saw behind the curtain, that person cannot be governed through illusion. They've seen too much, and they're not going back. Lucid dreaming is not escape, it's return. Every night you're given a doorway. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it shakes you, but it's always there. And every time you walk through it, eyes open, mind quiet, heart alert, you reclaim what was stolen, your memory, your power, your eternal identity. You are not a sleeper, you are a traveler. You've been there, you will go again, and this time you won't forget. That fear begins to fade because you've met the other side and realized you are not lost. You are not alone. You are never truly separated from the source of all wisdom and love. You are the traveler who returns home every night, carrying pieces of the eternal, holding the keys to your own awakening. So start where you are. Honor that quiet knowing inside. Listen with sacred curiosity, because the journey back to yourself begins with presence, and presence lights the way. You've been there before. You'll go again. And this time, you won't go blind. And most importantly, you'll see that awakening isn't just a spiritual concept, it's a nightly opportunity. So tonight, when your head hits the pillow, don't just go to sleep. Step into your journey. Close your eyes with intention. Ask the question, and then listen, because the dream may answer back.